All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. This webinar particularly is going to be on brand journalism, as well as website design tips and information that should be on your website. So we're going to wait a little bit to see for others to join us. Feel free to leave any questions in the chat box, as well as email us questions as we go through the presentation. And when you join, I see we have 2 viewers. Upon joining, if you could comment in the chat box with your name, your title, as well as which school you're with. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to tune in. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to pull up our presentation. All right, so now on your screen, you should see our presentation. Best website practices. Also, if you're having any trouble tuning in, feel free to shoot us an email right now. You can shoot me an email at victoriap@samsochoa, as well as Tanya, which is tanya@samsochoa.com. And we'd be happy to help you get connected. But also, again, this webinar will be on YouTube later for viewing. If you have any trouble and you have to leave during the presentation for whatever reason, or if you want to come back and rewatch it at a later time. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started so we can stay on track with time. So the first presentation we'll go over is best website practices. We here at Sam Ochoa, we are not website designers, but we do have a good knowledge of what should be on a website, what type of content, what type of services and applications should be on your website, and just the best type of information you should present to your viewers. So we're going to go over that just a little bit. Pulled up here is our outline. As you can see, we'll talk about design, content, mobile responsiveness, social media, accessibility, and reliability. All right, so first is design. So the design of your website should be personalized. It should reflect, of course, the culture of your school, its character, the overall feel of your school should be reflected in your website. For example, if your school crest is a certain design and it's certain colors, it should reflect, or whatever symbol, maybe it's a logo if it isn't just a crest, but it should be reflected in your website as well. Your website should also not be cluttered or overall have a messy feel to it. So the colors are all over the place. The design of it is just overall messy. You want to ensure to keep the colors and overall design basic, and not basic in the sense of not having enough content of it looking empty, but you want it to be overall easy to navigate through. And then connect. Your website should also connect your audience to your school as well. So Stanford did a study and 75% of users admit to actually making judgments about an organization or a school's credibility based on their website design alone. So this shows how connected your viewers and your website visitors are to a website and how this is a representation of your school. So think of your website as an opportunity to build a comfortable, or at least the most comfortable place or experience with your school. And also think about it as being the first impression that someone will have of your school if they've never visited in person, if they've heard about it simply by a friend, by word of mouth, or even if they've found your school on social media, they're most often than not going to visit your website. So think of this as being a first impression. And of course, you want that to be positive. So when you are overall designing your website, think about 2 different questions to ask yourself in the design process. When a potential student or parent visits the website, do they receive, 1, a positive impression of your school? And then 2, what kind of visual image do they form if they were to take one glance at your school's website? So it's important to think about these things because it's carrying your school's image along over the internet. And of course, anything on the internet is visible, so always keep that in mind. Your website is also what drives perception of your school. So of course, that's going to play a huge role in how your school is perceived. So not only should your website look clean and clutter-free, but it should excel in terms of 1, usage, and 2, navigation. So always keep that in mind when you are in the process of designing your website. If you are not designing it yourself, if you're outsourcing it, ensure that that is, it rings true throughout your website, throughout the design process, and make that evident to your designer. Next, we're going to talk about content. So add new content. Of course, you want every piece of copy, every type of content to be reliable as well as timely. So you want your visitors to know that your website will never have old and stale, useless information on their website. It always should be necessary, and it should be important and applicable to visitors, parents, and even future potential students as well as current students. So only add necessary information as well. The type of content should be relevant and provide parents and students with news updates, of course, engaging photos, and up-to-date school calendars. So if there's a tab on your school website that has school calendars, whether it's a calendar for students, for parents, if it also has a lunch menu on there, ensure that the calendars are always up to date. Update them monthly if need be, or even weekly. However you deliver that information to your visitors, but it should always be timely. You want your visitors to have that reliability in mind, that they can visit your website and never end up at a dead end. They always can leave with the information that they need. Next, we'll talk about mobile responsiveness. So it is a rising trend. Anyone who views a website on their laptop, most likely than not, they're going to view the same website on their phone. If not first, then sometime they will. In 2017, 52% of total global internet traffic took place on a mobile phone. And it's projected by 2020 that the global smartphone user base is expected to reach 6.1 billion. So, of course, we all know that that's true because often we are looking at websites on our phone more than we do on our computer. So think of it as a place to be responsive to your visitors. When you are designing your website, you want the mobile phone to be able to integrate, or you want your website to be integrated for a mobile phone. The consequences. So most people don't know, but Google is now using mobile friendliness as a website as a ranking signal. And they actually punish websites who aren't optimized for smartphones and tablets. So when you are in the process of having someone design your website or designing it yourself, feel free to bring that up to them. Ensure that it's optimized correctly for a smartphone and for a tablet as well. Thirdly, you want to prioritize the user experience. You want to provide the user with an experience that, if you can avoid it, you don't want any frustration at all. You don't want them to pull up a website on their phone and not be able to navigate the tabs easily, or to not be able to access content easily if they can't view a calendar through their phone that they need to access that morning. You don't want to put them in that situation where they have to grab a computer to look at it. You want them to be able to do it straight from their phone. So 3 tips for optimizing your website for mobile responsiveness. This is also overall for your school website. A caching plugin. So caching is a complex technology that does one thing. It makes your website really, really fast, and it uploads really fast. So a study by Content Delivery Network called Akamai, I believe is how it's pronounced, it showed that 47% of people expect a website to load in 2 seconds or less, and 40% of people will abandon a website if it takes more than 3 seconds. So you want it to be an easy process for anyone who uploads your website on their phone. The second thing is to optimize your images. This is something that you can always keep in mind when you are uploading relevant photos to your website, you want to optimize the image or upload the correct size to your website to ensure that it loads quickly and properly. So a website image should be the correct size, which is 72 ppi, which it stands for pixels per inch. So always ensure that when you're uploading photos monthly, weekly, however often you may be doing that to your website. And then the third thing is integrating HTTPS, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. So it's really just a fancy way of saying that all communication between your visitors, your website visitors, and your web browser are encrypted. So basically the S in HTTPS stands for secure. So it has security. That way your visitors are protected as well as your web browser. Next is social media. So this really complements the presentation we gave. It might have been last month or the month before that on social media. So first, link up. You want your website to be directly linked to your social media accounts, whichever those may be. Majority of them are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you want to be sure that you have that badge located or that logo, that's link, anywhere on your web page. Most websites have them at the bottom of their web page. Usually that's just the universal area for your social media badges to be. You never want to put them at the top of your web page because that's where your tab should be. That should be where your visitors can navigate your web page. So it's better to put them at the bottom, the left or right hand corner, and that's usually where most people expect to find them anyways. Secondly, connect. So use your social media channels as a way to communicate and connect with your community members, meaning you should point your community, your visitors to your social media and vice versa. And integrate. So integrate your social media channels into your copy even. So even if you have a calendar that is viewed weekly or monthly or any type of content, whether that's student of the month or teacher of the month, no matter what it may be, in your content, point them to your social media. And in your social media copy, always point them back to your website. So you want to integrate the two of them. They should be integrated well enough to where you always point them to each other. And then lastly, stay visible. So like I said, make your social media badges and icons very easy to find for your visitors because they're most likely, when they visit your website, they're going to want to stay current with your social media. And if you're able to keep it easy for them to find, they're most likely going to follow your social media sites. So always keep that in mind for integrating social media into your websites. Next is accessibility. So a school's website should be ADA friendly. So this is something that I wasn't too aware of, but in doing research for this, it's better for school websites to be ADA friendly. This is according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they have certain standards that you can follow. This is a piece of information that I will send to y'all at the end of the webinar. That way, if you're looking for more tips to comply with this, but they include automatic closed captioning and transcripts for videos that are uploaded to the site, as well as site navigation that is accessible by keyboard. They also want for pages to be structured logically with clear headers for screen readers, and then the ability to rename files you upload and label link text. So this just helps any type, maybe it could be a parent or it could be a student who is looking for a particular school to go to. If you're able to offer them this type of accessibility, it makes you stand out than most websites because most websites don't usually have this. So even just these little adjustments you can make to your web page help you stand out above all schools. And again, I will send you all more information on this, a link to where you can find the rules and the tips to do for your website that comply for ADA friendly. And then lastly is reliability. So a school's website should be available and accessible around the clock for any user that may visit. So you never know for a website when someone is going to visit. So staying on top of broken links maybe even broken web pages that are not working at the moment. Ensuring that that's kept up is just increases your reliability. Second is setting a high standard for your websites. It gives users the reliability that you want. So like I said, any links that are broken as technical errors, those should always be frequently monitored to avoid having that mishap. If you have a web designer that designed your web page, then have that constant communication with them. That way you're able to contact them. That way they can fix that for you, because most often we are not web designers and we're going to outsource this or have someone do this for us. And so having that constant communication with them just puts you in a good place with your visitors. So always be sure to monitor those. And that is all for website tips. We're going to move on to brand journalism in a second. But if anyone has any questions about this presentation on websites, please put them in the chat box. We'd be happy to answer them right now before we move on to brand journalism. And again, we are not website designers. We don't build websites as well. These are just tips from our interaction with websites and helping other clients of what they should have on their webpage. So if you were needing a web designer or looking for someone to maybe give your site a new look or update it, we would be happy to point you to web designers and web builders that we do know. And don't see any questions right now, so we're going to have Tanya go ahead and talk about brand journalism.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about exactly what brand journalism is. Specifically, it's creating journalistic content so that you don't have to wait for the media to do it for you. Essentially, every time, a couple of webinars ago, we talked about the process of press releases and pitching and how we actually get media to cover events and announcements and those kind of things. So in essence, brand journalism has taken up a huge space online and just in general with social media and the way that people communicate, because the way that people have begun to intake media and stories and those kind of things has truly changed. It's all user-generated content, and brand journalism gives you the opportunity to be the generator of your own content. Like we talked about before, there are many media outlets, TV stations, and all the online entities, radio stations. When we send press releases and pitches and story ideas to them, they may get lost in the shuffle. It always helps when you have a relationship with them so that it doesn't. But we've been told they can get up to 600 to 1,200 emails every single day. And so being able to decipher what stories they're going to tell and why or how they should tell them becomes a little bit more difficult when they have that many story ideas to sort through. So we've already talked about ways that you can stand out when you do want the media to pick up your story. And those are things that you should definitely incorporate along with brand journalism. We're not trying to say that we should abandon media relations and the ability and opportunities to reach out to the media altogether. Brand journalism is something that can supplement and really put you on the forefront of being able to tell your stories to your audience, so that once again, either if the story doesn't get or gets overlooked, or if it's a story that the media will tell down the road, or they don't feel like it's the most timely thing but would like to do it in the future, you don't have to wait as a school or organization to have that story told. You can take the steps that you need to take to have it told for you. You can use brand journalism to attract your target audience, provide information, and really build brand awareness. The beauty of using brand journalism is that you're able to control that message. With brand journalism, there are a few different ways we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes, but a few different ways that you can showcase and display it. But one of those is specifically is social media. So you already have access to the audience that you would like to target. It's your niche audience that you've generated and created through social media, or that you already know you have access to through your websites and different portals. So you're using the audience that you already have and can build upon that audience, because everyone who is part of the parents and students and faculty and teachers that you serve, they're already a part of the audience that you serve on social media, who you communicate with through your website. And so they're sitting there waiting for interesting stories and waiting to be further connected and have a desire to know more. And then they can help you share that message, because there are so many different shareable tools on in spaces like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So you can really use the journalism that you create in order to have them help share your stories with prospects and with future students and with colleagues and with desired partners that you may have for the school. So brand journalism allows you to create that message and tell your stories. It's important that it's consistent with your brand, so that it stands, just like what Victoria was talking about with the website, that it really stands for who you all are as a school and as individuals, and the values that you hold. You really want to keep that integrated into the stories that you tell. Again, because you have the ability to control the message, you're preparing and crafting and doing the things that that a journalist would do themselves as reporters, as producers, as generators of content. So you really get to control that message, and it's not like the typical media setup where you're being asked questions and you may or may not know what they are in advance, or someone may interview you and put you on the spot, and you're trying to think about how to respond quickly. With these, everything is pre-planned and prepared so that it can be a nice, high quality and very consistent message. And it is a little bit different in that it's coming directly from you as the school versus a third-party endorsement. But when it's on something like a website or being shared by a family or friend, they don't necessarily think about the fact that you're telling your own story. They're just seeing the story being told. So that is, in a nutshell, what brand journalism is. We'll talk about specifics with the defining characteristics and different examples of it now. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them into the chat box and I'll respond as we go. The defining characteristics of brand journalism are, one, that it is crafted exclusively for the niche audience in order to build awareness and really cultivate that brand affinity. So you already have, like we talked about, your Facebook pages are filled with fans, from parents to friends to students to family members to colleagues, teachers, faculty. You name it, supporters, those who are part of Hope for the Future and the charity, and you already have fans who are in your wheelhouse. Being able to craft that message specifically to them is important because you know that they're already interested in the brand. So it's not that you're having to try to create an ad or promotion that will reel them in. It's that you're digging deeper and really crafting something that shares in-depth stories with them that can help them increase their loyalty or learn more about the teachers or students or anyone involved with the school, that will give them a deeper connection, because that is an important thing, especially with the news. You know, when you get a third-party endorsement from the news, they're sharing something that will further connect the viewers with whomever the story is being told about. So that's really what you want to do when you're crafting a message with brand journalism. You're telling your own story, so you want to find ways to either tug at heartstrings or educate folks, or really just help them to understand more about what you all are about, so that their loyalty can enhance and increase, and that they feel a stronger connection. Number two is that to ensure that it's personalized. You really want to feel a connection between companies and the niche audience when you're creating brand journalism. So more specifically, we talk about customers, parents, and students, depending on the type of business. I mean, obviously each of you are different school entities. There are a variety. Brand journalism has no bounds, so it's not that it's only made for one industry. It's really it's able to be used for a variety of different industries, whomever wants to use it, whatever type of company. But really telling that personal story helps to bring people in to know more about the individuals within the school. You know, when you hear a story about, you see a sports team, for example, you already know about the team, you're a fan of the team, but then I'll use JJ Watt because he's incredible. Then you hear about someone like JJ Watt raising incredible amounts of money for victims of the hurricane, and the specific things that he did and the ways in which he acted in the community. If there are people like him, you know, that are not NFL star athletes in your schools, you can find those superstars within your schools and really create that personal connection, so that, again, people are feeling that have their heartstrings connected, and are able to know more and able to really appreciate the stories that exist there in your schools, and get to know more about the people who are a part of your school. Brand journalism needs to be engaging, inspiring, uplifting, and entertaining content. It's important that you're keeping people interested. So you can tell all different types of stories, particularly with social media, because there is a lot of clutter there, and you want to break through that clutter. You want to find creative ways to make things engaging, so that you can ensure that there's a reaction to your stories. So you don't want to be one of those that's just scrolled past or looked over. You really want to create something that off the bat is very touching or informative or interesting, makes people laugh. Think about the things that you like to see when you're watching the news, or when you're reading a publication, or on your favorite website. What are things that stick out to you and make you want to read more, click further, or make a comment on the story? You want to find those same types of things when you're telling the stories and sharing and creating content for brand journalism. It also needs to be verifiable and appealing. Just because you have control of the story doesn't mean that you can say whatever you want. You need to do your own due diligence. If you're reporting statistics or enhanced research, you want to look that information up and quote your sources. Brand journalism, and when you're creating video content or writing a story, it's more than just a promotion. You really are reporting about yourself or about the school. You want to make it appealing and interesting information for your viewers and readers. They're interested almost definitely in the kids who are attending your school, whether it's a parent or teachers or friends or family. Everyone is interested in those kiddos who are attending the school. So we know for sure that it would be interesting and appealing to them and relevant if it was either about the lives of the students or it makes an impact on their lives or the lives of their own children who are attending this school. Something that makes things appealing is really being able to further educate folks about these stories and just helping them to know more and figuring out ways that you can tell stories that would truly enhance their lives. So some different examples of brand journalism include two different aspects, and they're somewhat overlapping, but the social aspect is that of social media. So we've talked about Facebook Live before. I'll give you an example of, we've done some different Facebook Live event or programs with Hope for the Future and gone out on site and filmed different events going on, announcements that we have with the rural court. We went in and filmed and showcased the different ways that folks were raising money. Specifically, when you're creating something for brand journalism, you want it to look like or read like a news story. We work with Geekdom as well, and each week we have a program that we have titled Geekdom Live with them, and we actually have one of the Geekdom staff members who interviews different members of the Geekdom community or different colleagues or surrounding business owners or owners of the surrounding businesses of the co-working space. And really dives deep into telling more of their story. Sometimes it can be as simple as one of the startup companies who has created an idea and they talk about how they created it and how that idea came to fruition and how it's progressed. And other times we've gone down the street and interviewed a restaurant owner and had them show us how they make their favorite dish at the restaurant, what the favorites are of their customers, and the things that they have planned out for the future, different events that they have going on. So if you begin using Facebook Live more regularly, particularly for brand journalism purposes, look at finding a way that you can create a program or a segment, an interview segment, or a miniature TV show yourself that's live streaming, that can be, again, consistent with the brand that you have on your website, within the school, just across every single kind of platform. And really think about the people who you want to find specific folks who can be featured as the interviewers, who can be the experts who are sharing the stories. And you really, we'll talk about this in a little bit more depth later, but you want to find people who represent the brand so well, who are engaging, who are animated, who are energetic, and can interview in the right way, ask questions that are very conversational. That's the way we worked it with Geekdom Live and the other similar Facebook Live broadcasts that we've done that represent brand journalism. You want to introduce, if someone is acting as the interviewer, you want them to introduce themselves on behalf of your respective schools. And you can even call them a correspondent for the school and make them act as the reporter, and just have them be a consistent presence. Have them act as your school's reporter. That's one example of a way you can do it. Instagram Live is something that's similar. You can use these in collaboration and alignment with each other. You can use them individually. You may find that you get more viewers in one space than the other. Facebook Live, Facebook initially had their Facebook Live videos ranking fairly high in the algorithm, which basically means it's what you see the most of. And it's ciphered off a bit, but once the videos are posted after they've gone live, you may have a handful of viewers when you're initially live. Once they are posted following the live feed, you'll typically get a good amount of viewers because video is king on all social media sites right now. It ranks really, really well. There's great visibility. So you really want to look at using more video with social and in collaboration with your brand journalism, because that's where it's at right now. But again, Instagram Live is similarly, if you're familiar with Instagram or remember us talking about that in the social media case, we talked about the Instagram stories. Instagram Live is just a different version of the story, but it's a live option. Same thing, you're doing a live stream. You can find different opportunities for interviews. You can have your representative or correspondent interviewing fellow teachers, interviewing students. You can have students interviewing students. We'll talk about that more in depth as well in just a little bit. But really, there are different and fun filters that you can use for both of these, for Facebook Live, Instagram Live. Twitter also has a live option. You're going to want to experiment and test with these just to see where you get the highest number of viewers. Instagram does a great job at announcing to anyone who's on Instagram at the time who is following you that they can tune into your broadcast and that you've gone live. And so you really want to engage with them when you see people who have joined. You can have the reporter or correspondent or even the person who's filming greet anyone who's coming in to watch. You want to make sure both of these are high quality, though. That's something that needs to be, when we talk about consistency of brand, quality flows right into that statement. So we want to make sure the connection's right. We want to make sure that we have some additional tools. Have you talked about the stabilizers and things like that? So there are other things, equipment type of things that you can use to enhance the brand journalism. Something called a stabilizer that basically holds the iPhone or smartphone and allows you to get really good angles and shots and panning. So it actually looks like, if you have a smartphone and a good internet connection, plus that stabilizer, it can look almost identical to something that's shown on TV. So it's very, you have great potential with those, and it's not too expensive to create something that looks high quality when you have those smartphones already in your hands. And something like a stabilizer costs about $120, and it's fantastic. It really gives that professional look and feel. And again, you can use these on any one of the social media platforms. We just listed those two specifically because we've had the best results from those, as far as people watching and viewing and commenting and getting really engaged and excited to see that content. One more thing we'll talk about with these lives, it doesn't necessarily have to be an interview that you're showcasing when you're doing brand journalism. It may just be someone telling their story, or you could even do like a newscast type of setup where you have either the staff or teachers speaking, or you could even do like a student setup where the students are delivering the news. So it doesn't have to be interview type of thing. It can be a variety. It's just storytelling. You're storytelling, but it's live. And then when you're done, it lives there for eternity. The Instagram, I take that back. Facebook Live will live there forever. So will Twitter. The Instagram remains for 24 hours. You can definitely download that and use it at a later time. Another way that you can expand brand journalism and use brand journalism, another example of that socially, is through blogs. Blog content is essentially something that will further educate any of your readers. Again, we're going to assume that you already have that audience tied in from your schools, and that you're speaking to people like teachers and parents and students, and then the extended family and friends. You don't want to forget those family and friends, because those are the ones who will probably have the information shared with them, and those are ones who you could who you really want to look at as the prospects and potential future students or parents of future students who you're communicating with. The blogs you can use really to provide more information about the school. You can talk about events, you can tell stories here, you can do features, you can write editorials, you can talk about the different policies. Of course, we probably want to avoid particular areas like politics or things that would end up in mob mentality, but we can still talk about policies in education and what your schools individually are doing to support those policies. We can give some student perspectives, so allow the opportunity for students to write a blog. You can give, essentially it's a way for you to be able to write rather than filming. So it's our newspaper, online newspaper piece of the social media, and you can tie it right into all of your social platforms. Really highlighting the different stories about your teachers, staff, or faculty, outstanding things that students have done, talking about events and the way that it's impacted the community, charitable efforts that you've completed. Those are all things that can go into your blog. Typically, we want to keep blogs not too long, maybe between 400 and 700 words. If you get too much longer, you're really getting into the story and report type of territory, which is something that you can do, but more so what we'll talk about digitally in a few minutes. You can also do tips of the week that can really connect with, mostly with parents, and give tips of the week from students, from teachers, give how-tos about how they can best impact their students at home, or tips from teachers about different ways that that they feel are the best to teach with or connect with the students. And then moving into the digital realm, we're looking at more so a news story site. So something that's like you may want to look at adding something like this to your website, or you can create a standalone site or page that includes all of these different stories. It's basically like if you go to ksat.com and they have all of their stories that the reporters have told. They have all of the video that they filmed. They have the Facebook Live embedded videos that they've done. All the different journalism pieces that are included, they're keeping in one place. We really want to look at providing quality and professional looking stories and reports and videos in this capacity. The digital piece, the first example of that is the produced and embedded videos. So this is something like a news story that you would see that is maybe a human interest story, where someone's telling the story of a teacher who raised $5,000 for the charity of their choice and has worked endlessly with their students in order to make it happen and to just better the community, and showing the different things that they've done along the way through video, showing them in the classroom, doing those kind of things, but just a pre-recorded video that, sure, if you have the capability, you can edit that. It can also be something that's shot all in one fell swoop, so that you can just upload it right to that news site page, or the individual news site or the page that you create on your own website. Student created content is another example of what you could do digitally. Ask your students, have the teachers ask the students, if any of them are interested or knowledgeable about video editing. There are a lot of apps and tools that are easy to use and either free or relatively inexpensive that you can use to edit both photography and videography. And you might find that you have students and teachers alike that are interested in doing these kind of things. I think it would be really interesting and creative and cool to create a student meetup that helps to generate this content and be a part of your brand journalism and your storytelling. And they can, give the stories from their eyes. You could have a professional group or a group of teachers or a few folks who are on the staff who may be interested in being a part of sharing that content, but finding interested students would really provide for an interesting and unique perspective. And their parents will watch it and be proud of them and want to share that. And so it will only enhance the visibility and opportunities that you have to reach more people and tell your story to a greater audience and allow them to know more about your school and the things that are taking place within it and the special people that you have inside of it. Another example is pre-taped interviews. So this is, or we can relate it directly to those Facebook Live and the Instagram Live pieces that we talked about. Just something that's pre-taped that we can, you have the opportunity to edit it, or just sometimes for people's comfortability level, if they're being interviewed, knowing that it's something that they can restart on, that it's not live, that they don't have to do it all in one take. It gives some people a peace of mind, so you may find that you'll have better interviews when they're done pre-taped as opposed to live. The journeys and stories. This is a spot where you can really highlight the interesting stories about students and teachers. You can showcase students who have been in the Catholic school system for the duration of their educational careers, highlight what they've done, the impact that they've had, and truly show the value of the school. This is a really good opportunity for you to connect with or allow the students to connect with future students or prospective parents of students who are, or parents of prospective students who are looking at and interested in the Catholic school system and specifically your schools, and really show them the difference that the schools have made and why it would be a good choice for their kiddos. So these are specific examples, not an exhaustive list, but some specific examples in the social and digital realm of how you can create your own brand journalism. In essence, again, it's just you or team members who you select who are around you or students that you select generating that content just like you're your own news station and producing it and putting out into the world. Now we'll go through some tips on how to have success with brand journalism. Some other things you need to think about when you are preparing these different pieces and elements to share. The first thing is to make it more than just a long ad or advertisement. You really want to include interesting interviews, expert thoughts, critical thinking, viewpoints, entertainment perspective. Really just get creative when you're telling the stories. While you do want it to be informative about the school and about the people who are a part of it, you can step outside of the realm of the school every once in a while to really dig deep and tell stories or share new information. If you have a visitor on campus who's coming to share different ways that students can have an impact or to share different knowledge that they have. or if it's a community leader who comes to the school, think about using those types of things. While you have every opportunity, you know, the brand should be consistent. So your advertisement should be underlying throughout everything that you produce. People know that it's coming from you. You want that to be showcased in what you're doing, which is why we talk about things like creating your own correspondent and having people writing on your behalf. But so there within that branding and within the representation and connection to your schools, the ad already exists, the promotion exists. It's then your job to use the brand journalism to really draw people in, keep them connected, and keep them engaged. The next tip or point is to prepare like a journalist. So you want to think about how that you can gather data. It's basically if we're thinking about it from a news perspective, our reporters are all at I'm not, by no means are we saying that you need to hold morning news meetings and distribute stories and make sure that teachers are telling them, but just think about it from this realm. So I'm just going to describe to you the way that the news meetings work at the different TV stations. So they have a meeting every morning every afternoon where the reporters all pitch different story ideas that they've learned about or have come up with or think would be interesting or are trending. Then the different producers, executive producers, and finally the news directors have to approve the stories, but they're sharing, the journalists, the reporters are sharing the reasons why they feel like it would impact the viewers. So think about the people who are going to be reading or viewing your content. And then you know, when ideas for stories are brought to you, or you think of ideas for stories, think about how it will impact them, why it matters to them. And then whomever is taking on the role of doing the interview or writing up a blog or writing up a news article on your behalf, make sure that they're gathering data correctly. Let's say, for example, you're covering an event. Or you want to showcase an event through a blog or through an article that you would put on your school's news website. You want to create, or you want to collect a lot of the data and information about the event. Of course, we're going to grab all of the logistics about the who, what, when, where, why, but then think about captions for photos, get the names of the spokespeople, who you're taking pictures of or who you're quoting, pull key quotes that you can use within the blog or story or the interview, get the attendance for the event, obviously highlight whatever the major announcement was and the additional details. So we want to, again, we're thinking about it as if I'm assigned to write this story, here's what anyone who's reading it would want to know. Cover all your bases when it comes to preparing like a journalist when sharing any kind of story or doing any kind of interview you'd like to do. And then I've spoken about this now a few different times throughout, so we'll dig a little deeper. Within Victoria's email, she'll send you some examples of resources and website examples that we do have for to either create your own site or to put a news page on your school's website. Specifically, what you will receive are 3 different examples. One from a website called Autodesk, and they utilize, there's like a help site, and they utilize their own media pretty much to give Q&As and tips and showcase ways that you can improve X, Y, or Z. And then so it's providing self-help, but then also doing it in the realm of storytelling. So it's not just a blatant, again, a promo in your face, but really providing education and information. The University of Alberta and the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, which will also send you, the University of Alberta has a separate site that's basically like a school newspaper They identify it as their own brand journalism. So they're telling their own stories of students, of professors, and the like, that really highlight what the schools, individuals, the people who are attending it, the people who are part of it, what they're about, and how they're of a value to the community, to the school, and how they may be a value of those who will attend the school in the future. And then the Cleveland Metro School District site has its own news page on their website, and tells stories about events and different things that they have going on at the school. Some of them are a little bit more interactive and engaging than others. The university uses a little bit more video than does the Metro School District. But it gives, these three give good examples of what your own site or news page might look like. So again, you can use this as a collection of where you're putting all of the different data, the news pieces, the stories, the videos. You could even do things like podcasts or audio recording. That's one that we didn't really highlight in here, but a podcast would be a good opportunity to interview folks who, especially if they're less comfortable being on TV or a live stream. You could do a podcast, and those are simple as well. We can send a brief note on some how-tos for a website on how-tos for starting a podcast. It's something that you could easily do within your schools. You could feature a teacher a week. You could feature a community leader a week, which will give you more opportunity to connect with supporters for your school. So there are a lot of different opportunities you could use for podcasts, and be able to heavily brand this school and what you're about. And it's a different way. So if the news site or the page on your own website could be used to collect all of these things together, so that when anyone goes to visit the website or page, you have all of the stories that you've told along the way. And it's again set up just like if you're going to an expressnews.com or the Rivard Report, or KSAT or KENS, just like a news station, but for your very own school with your own controlled messages. A few more tips. All this to say, I know we started this, one moment, water drinking. We started by talking about the fact that sometimes the news, it's hard to break through. There's so much information that they receive, so many story ideas that they receive. So again, we're not saying this to deter you from sending something to them. And in fact, this may be very helpful for them. We've had a number of news outlets who now ask us, when we send them a press release or media alert to cover an event or an announcement, they say that they can't send someone out, but they ask us if we can send what they call B-roll, which is basically background footage, or an interview or pictures, and then a few more specifics on the story so that they can share it as a news piece. We actually did, recently there was a kids' day at the new Frost Tower that's being built, and they invited many children within the community to actually help build the tower. One of the stations asked us for some pictures. In return, we gave them more than pictures. We gave them pictures. We gave them background footage. We gave them an interview with the producer of the event, and he talked about the reasons that they were doing this and what the Frost Tower would mean to San Antonio. We interviewed one of the children as well and sent that all in a folder to this station, and they produced a very nice piece from it. So you may still be doing all of these brand journalism pieces. If you are going to send something to the news, let it be as such. If it's an interview, something where your correspondent is not standing within that video. So it's something where, say, the interviewee would be standing in front of the video or the camera, and the interviewer would be standing behind the camera and just probing with those questions. So that's something that would be more beneficial for them to receive. Either that or a write-up of an event with a number of pictures, or just background video roll, that allows them to craft something or edit something into an easy 90-second to 3-minute story that they can share as well. Don't send attachments. Send them all, folder it up, and either send it in a zip file, or you can just send them the link to the folder to make it easier for them to open and prepare and edit and do all of those things. So you still definitely have the opportunity to put something in the news if you would like to, and particularly if you're creating these things with higher quality and telling these stories that are of interest, or that are really eye-catching. You can have a win-win situation because you're already providing it for your niche audience, but still potentially able to get it in front of the news and reach an even broader scope. So another tip is to be creative and on brand. Again, we talked about having any of your correspondents or writers or reporters, aka teachers and students, branded as your own school's representatives. You also want to be creative with it. So again, we talked about the brand being about your students. We're doing the campaign for I'm a Catholic School Kid. You can attach to something like that and get creative and have them doing the interviews. Some of the things that are the most watched on places like YouTube and other internet sites are pets and kids. So if you can get those kiddos involved and have them doing the interviews and have them either interviewing one another, you may want to do those as pre-recorded interviews because on a live stream you may not know how it'll end up, or having them, write reports on one another, or having the students interview the teachers, or teachers interview the students, really engaging them because they're a huge part of what each of your school's brands are. So getting them involved, one, it gives you a direct contact to, again, those parents that want to watch their kids on your own branded TV, or they'll want to read something that they've written and then share it and share it and share it some more. So really getting creative with their involvement would likely behoove your brand journalism and the popularity of it. And then tucking promos into an engaging narrative. So we talked about this just a bit, but really being able to showcase what the school is about, and you can certainly give a call to action, in the different pieces that you're doing, or if you're on the air. I'll bring it back to Geekdom Live for an example. The community manager for Geekdom, who's doing the interviews of the different members or the different partners within the community, he'll introduce himself as being from Geekdom on Geekdom Live, and then at the end talks about following all of the Geekdom social media outlets and coming in for a tour. So he gives calls to action at the end or within, and integrates them within the different interviews that he does. And you want to be able to do that because at the end of the day, like we said, the beauty of what brand journalism is really controlling that message. So you're able to say things, whereas if you were being interviewed on the news and you started listing on, you really wanted to thank all of your sponsors and you really wanted to tell people the mission of the school. Those are reporters and video journalists come out and they'll film 15 minutes of interview, and then when you watch it on TV, it could be a 10-second soundbite from the 15 minutes of words that you spoke. So in this, you get to choose. You get to choose what's included and what's being said. And if you do want to thank those sponsors, or you do want to thank the people who have supported the school or supported you, or if you do want to talk about the opportunities people have to visit the school or to get to know more about it. So really being able to, it doesn't have to be blatant. It can just be an easy inclusion within the story, at the end of a story, at the beginning of a story, at the close of an interview. Find ways that you can include it, and you don't have to include it every time. You don't need to include it in every story. Certainly include something about your school, your brand in every story, and make sure that it's somehow integrated or interweaved in, or just branded at the top or the bottom of each story. And because it's going to be on your site, it certainly already should be. Or there are ways that within like the live streams that you can create the bottom thirds that you see on TV stations that have their reporter's name and whatever the story name is, and then the brand of the TV station. So there are ways that you can brand without having specific ads and promotions as well, but you certainly want to take the opportunity on an occasional basis, and when it's appropriate, to interweave those promotions. That's the final tip. These are a variety of ways that you can utilize brand journalism. Like we said, this is not an exhaustive list, so certainly think about it when you're watching or intaking news, ways that you can use the way that the news is told to tell your own news for the people who are interested in what you have and the people who you want to attract. So really, if there are ways that you can best share this story, or things that you think would be the most appealing to future attendees of the schools, or their parents or friends or colleagues or supporters, think about the way that you can have an impact. There are so many ways that you can connect, and with the control of brand journalism, you're able to share your own story and really get out the message that you want to. So we'll wrap here for the content, but we are ready and open for your questions. We can speak back to the website tips and design elements that Victoria spoke about, or we can answer any questions that you may have about brand journalism itself.
Gabriel asked, if you have a question via email, sure, you can send it to me, Victoria P at Samuelsochoa, or Tanya as well at Tanya@samuelsochoa.com. Again, we are going to send resources after this webinar, after we wrap it up, for everything that we just went over. If you have any questions by email, like we said, feel free to ask us via email, or you can ask us right now and we could address to everyone who's viewing. We're now open for questions. I don't know, Gabriel, I hope I answered. I don't know if you heard. Also, for our next webinar, if you have any tips on what our next webinar could be, or anything that we haven't covered yet, you can also feel free to email us with those types of questions as well. Should we ask about the last day of school?
Oh yeah, is today y'all's last day of school?
That would determine. Okay.
And start doing the Jeopardy music.
I think there is a. Oh, they finished.
Last week. Okay.
Okay. Good to know.
Congrats. You did it. Another year in the books.
Schools were out last Friday.
Okay, very good.
Good. Okay. We don't see any questions coming in regarding this presentation. So again, feel free to send us questions via email after this, but I'll be following up in the next 10 to 15 minutes with links as well as other information we can provide you with. All right. Thanks you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.